Welcome back, everybody. It is Business Monday here at the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. Thank our friends over at Deepwater Wind for their support. Saul Kaplan is back from Ireland. Are you inspired by Irish innovation?
I'm inspired by a lot of things about Ireland. The trip was fantastic. The country is beautiful. We had a nice mix of it's Dublin in the city and then out in the countryside. It was great. People were great. Clearly, the economy has done well.
Oh, God, booming over there.
We had a driver who told us the unemployment rate was 1.6%. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we can't even imagine 1.6%.
And by the way, 30 years ago, it was 20%,
No.
15, 20% unemployment.
Yeah. So some pretty good macro policy, right? Corporate tax rates that were favorable. A lot of companies put up facilities there, and a lot of people got work. But great. It was just a great trip, and be able to fly from TF Green.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Pretty amazing. So that's pretty cool.
Couldn't be easier to get to Europe than to leave your house, be at the airport, check in, through security, and at your gate in less than an hour.
Oh, it's unbelievable. I said, and reasonably priced. I mean, it's cost me more, and it can take longer to get to Philadelphia. Right?
The train to New York is more expensive if you take the Excel Express.
So good for Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Connection points and people coming in and out. There were a lot of people. I guess I should have known this, but there were a lot of people that were just coming through to get at that flight.
Yeah.
From wherever
absolutely.
they were coming in the country, they flew here and connected up with this flight out of Providence.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I suspect that's what the airport wants.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Through traffic. And
huge opportunity for Rhode Island.
Right.
And couldn't be nicer. While you were away, Elon Musk had another interesting, one of the iconic innovators in America today, heads up, and I don't know how many companies now, solar companies, Tesla,
Space companies.
SpaceX, just about anything he can think of. He's got a major corporation to do it. But the wheels really seem to come off the wagon in a very painful public structure. Last Sunday's New York Times, I think it was Saturday or Sunday, published an interview with him where he seemed to have close to a bit of a nervous breakdown during the course of the interview and exposed his own fragileness, which is complete contrast to his persona the previous 10, 15 years, 20 years. What's your take on that?
There's a lot of interesting things to talk about there. He threw a little bit of a tantrum, didn't he? And whined a little bit about how hard it is, which you don't expect from a CEO.
No.
But in some respects, there was something. I thought kind of nice about him sharing openly and transparently, in that New York Times article, just how difficult this roller coaster ride is, and he's been on the roller coaster for a very long time. I think he was venting a little bit about frustration for what it means to be in the public markets. And that tweet that he sent out, just throwing out a trial balloon, about taking
you're
it
not
private.
allowed to do that. By the way, you're not allowed to do that.
Well, he got in a lot of hot water from his board, from the market, and we'll see. I don't think anything will come of it from the SEC, but it could. It could. He had to take it back, and he had to come out pretty clearly, and say,
we're not going to take it
After thinking
private.
about this,
Right.
I think we're better off staying public.
A lot of people, I think a week ago Friday, made billions of dollars on selling the stock short.
Sellers,
And just a significant disruption. Are we getting close to the point, at least in seeing it from a public standpoint, of events in the personal nature and allegations of this and that by rappers staying at his house and all the tweets, and that the board has a fiduciary responsibility at some point to say, maybe we need some day-to-day adult supervision, or maybe we need to make a change in structure.
I don't think it's come to that.
Can you take that level of visionary out of the corporate entity at this fragile state with
I think the
so
board
many
has
factors?
I think the board has a responsibility. I think the board is exercising it. I don't think it's anywhere near that level, but they, in no uncertain terms, came, back at Elon, and said, you got to stop doing that, right?
Yep.
This stuff is real. There are SEC regulations, that prevent us to do it. This all goes away, by the way. If they get production levels, where they need to be, right? This all goes away,
Yeah.
right? I mean, this is all about them trying to get to a production level to start to meet demand, and this thing prints cash when they.
So this
when they
is
can
on
do
the
that.
new lower price Tesla.
Right.
That's supposed to be $40,000.
Right.
Hundreds of thousands, certainly tens of thousands,
Back-ordered.
have put in deposits, cash deposits, and they're missing production schedules by orders of magnitude. They're hundreds of thousands of units behind, and de facto years behind of what their estimated
Well, they're
production
doing
schedule.
better. There was a time there where you could question whether they were ever going to get there. They started to improve. They did a lot of workarounds, tents, production lines under tents and things like that. I think it's improving, and the demand has held pretty solid for these cars.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of this conversation settles down when they can get production levels up, start to fulfill demand. This is all about not wanting to go back to the public stock market again, right? Because they're burning a lot of cash,
Yeah.
right? And they start to become cash flow positive and show a profit when they can get to production levels. The demand, as long as the demand stays there, I think the fundamentals of this thing are still there to deserve a pretty good multiple, whether it's at $420 a share that he was talking about, taking it private at or not. But I think the market's there. The short sellers will obviously be there nipping at his heels.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think that's going
Thursday
away.
or Friday, there was a Forbes Business Insider story that Apple was raiding talent from Tesla at record pace because of the lack of stability. At some point, does that catches up with you? You get unstable.
that's right.
Smart people say, I'm not up for this ride.
No, it has to be credible. You have
right.
to believe if you're going to invest a chunk of your career, and a lot is riding on making these production levels and fulfilling this demand, then you got to believe that it could happen, or why would you go there, right? You want to be part of an exciting initiative like Tesla. You believe in the product and what they're trying to do. It's good for the planet. The cars are crazy cool.
Yeah.
I think this lower price point car allows mere mortals, to be able to afford this
cool.
car,
Right.
and they just have to pump them out off the manufacturing line. The war on talent is real, though. All these big tech
Yeah.
platforms and companies, they're going to take advantage of everything they see in the marketplace, to get at the talent they need to grow. And you could argue that the barrier isn't capital. The barrier is talent.
Yeah.
And the ability to scale these things.
Let's jump over. There were probably two global things that were going on last week. One, the smoke from the wildfires in the West, and then the number of curse words voiced on Route 195 coming into Providence.
I heard them all the way in Ireland. I think
Yes, both of them had international impact,
Yeah.
one relative to pollution, air pollution, the other to one's hearing. How does... In this time, how can a major governmental function, miscalculate so badly about what the implications of something is going to be? It seems a little strange.
Well, I mean, that they got the model so wrong about what
So completely
to
wrong.
predict what the traffic is going.
Absolutely.
So they've made some changes. I'm assuming they made some changes
Last night.
in the layout of the construction work,
Right.
which will probably stretch out the time. It'll probably add some costs to the thing. But this thing got so heated, and people were so outraged. I mean, leave it to Rhode Islanders, right? If it's not a snowstorm, at least you can't control that.
Well,
But this
I
is
think
something
there's-
we can.
Yeah,
This is
right.
a
This
project
is
that we
a-
need to take on.
Right, self-inflicted, and in addition, this wasn't adding 5 or 10% to people's commute in time. This
Right.
was multiplying by 2, 3, 400.
Yeah.
As I mentioned
Yeah.
with Gary, driving out 195 at 10:30 on Friday morning to head down to Newport for an event, and it was still backed up 3 miles beyond Seekonk at 10:30 in the morning on a Friday in the summer.
No, it's amazing.
So,
No, and you know, Rhode Islanders aren't going to put up with that for
No.
a year and a half, no matter how bad the bridge is done. It needs repair. So
Right.
you're going to need another model, and you're going to need to stretch out the construction. It's still going to be inconvenient. There's still going to be a lot of pain. People are going to peel off. They're going to either change their work patterns if they can. Some people probably were even going up to 24 and coming around the back way.
Oh, they're
and coming
trying
back in
everything.
that
Yeah,
way.
absolutely.
People do anything to get around traffic, but there's nothing that gets people angrier than being stuck in traffic. And our traffic is not bad compared to a lot of other places in the country. It's one of the advantages of living here. You go out to a major city, you're in LA,
Right.
or you're in New York,
Boston.
or you're in Boston. We have it good here. So let's keep it in perspective. But I'm glad that they were looking at the workarounds, because it's just not sustainable, given some of the things that I read.
but does it seem perplexing that you could miscalculate by so much? I mean,
They do the best they can. I mean, it's a simulation model.
Right.
I'm sure they have software to be able to do it. And they do the best they can to project, what will happen to traffic patterns. I mean, they have the traffic data.
But don't they have the 2 jars and the jelly beans, right? I mean, if you close off the mouth of one of the jars, then a lot of jelly beans are going to spill. I mean,
You don't need to be.
I don't know. This just doesn't seem that complicated.
You don't think it's a linear programming challenge?
They closed off 40% of the access points. That's going to have a problem.
Yeah, and it did. And it did. Yeah, there's no question about that. And it's hot, and tempers are flaring,
And it's in the summer where people are on vacation. Wait
Right.
till back to school,
This week,
functionally
next
this
week.
week, next week, going
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
And also have you now stained DOT and to some part the governor, which is every backup now on 195 forevermore for the next 24 months is going to be blamed on this
I'm just using
miscalculation.
it as a standing. I mean, I'm fortunate to live here in Providence, not on the East Bay, so I don't have to deal with that. And now I have a built-in excuse not to go out to Seekonk, to have to go out and shop at the. Like, not going there.
It's created a lot of excuses for everyone for being late to meetings. I was getting my hair cut across the street at the
Well, I mean,
arcade.
also-
I blamed it on the traffic on 195.
Hey, another thing. I mean, since I've been away, it seems like you were successful at getting rid of the scooters. It looks like you got the paw socks out of town. Like, what are you
That's
working on
right.
now? The Fane Tower? Like, what's the matter with you?
We are pro-Fane Tower from an editorial standpoint.
Oh,
We have-
okay.
We have voiced strong support for the Fane Tower. The bird scooters are nowhere to be seen.
They're gone. Well, they left in a big hurry. So
They left
isn't
in a
that
very
great?
big
And
hurry.
a lot of people are like cheering, but what about the people who could benefit from that kind of transportation? Here's an example, just as we talked, right? Like to try to work something out, to do some experiments, to see what works. Instead, what they did is they unilaterally put out, some regs. And the folks from Bird must have
wait,
looked
wait,
at it
wait,
and said,
wait,
like,
wait.
we're out of here. Pick up your scooters and go.
Wait,
right?
the unilateralness was they showed up on a Friday unannounced.
They didn't do it right.
And dumped it out.
But
on
you
the
think we
street.
did it right?
No, not at
Like
all.
by promulgating regulations where they said, that's fine, we're out of here.
Right.
It's too small a market, right? Like they're not here because we have 18 million people here, right? They're here, because there's enough density in the city.
You don't think
right?
they'll be back?
What?
You don't
Oh,
think
I
they'll
don't
be-
know. I have no insight into whether it'll be back, but this is what happens, when you try to stop innovators, without a thoughtful regulatory process, right? Yeah, you can put rules up there that nobody else, step up to, but that isn't what we really want. What we really want is to open up transportation options, for the people that live here, and we should have that mindset, don't you think?
100%, but there is some on the reckless side, right?
No.
Lack of enforcement thing. I mean, we don't put machetes out on the street and say dispute resolution tools.
I'm not arguing for no regulation. What I argue for is smarter regulation that's more flexible, that's more receptive to new approaches, right? Than one-size-fits-all regulatory. I think that's driven, mostly by lobbying from incumbents that are threatened by these new modes of transportation or new business models or new technologies, and they use the excuse of it's not good for public safety, it's not good for congestion in the streets. But the truth is, those things are gone now. So okay, so it's less likely that someone's going to get hurt by one, but it's also now there's one less option, for some young folks who I think we're
I think on
starting
our
to enjoy.
conversation with them most recently, their comments were that they were in the process of complying with
Yeah,
the
could
new
be.
regulatory structures, and they have some hurdles. They have to number
Yep.
their vehicles.
I don't
and
think the big
things
companies
like
are
that.
going away. I don't think Uber's going away from
No.
bikes and motorized bike. I mean, they're going to look at every mode of transportation for different pockets of the population. And yeah, they're going to have to work with municipalities and regulators, to make sure that we have really good regulations that are about public safety and the citizens' interest, not just the interest of incumbent companies.
So you will no longer be able to take your bird scooter down to the new Pawsock Stadium.
They
at
did in my
Apex.
office, by the way. Like one day I went there, and I think I
Did you
shot you
ride
a
it?
picture.
You did.
Right.
You sent me
and
one.
there's one
Texted me.
sitting outside in Olneyville, outside of Biff. And then when I talked to our team about it, they started telling me how they were using it, just to try it out
Yeah.
and see how they get there. They
Did you
thought
use
that-
one?
They thought the business. I didn't. I'm too old. I couldn't be
There's-
trusted.
There's no age restriction on
I
that.
couldn't be trusted.
We are now almost 3 weeks exactly
know.
away from Biff.
I know.
Everyone's it's all locked in, right?
It's,
we have
lock-
all
it's,
our
it's locked and loaded.
we have all our
now.
presenters,
The numbers,
storytellers.
It's going to sell out. We're filling in, the remaining seats and giving out the remaining scholarships. We want to make sure that we have a lot of students there. It's really important to us that we have youth there. I mean, these are folks who have the biggest stake in our future,
Yep.
and we don't invite them to the conversation. So we put youth on our stage, and we put a lot of youth in that theater, and we purposely want them to collide and connect and collaborate with a lot of the adults that are trying to imagine new ways to solve these important social challenges that we face. Yeah, we're getting excited. 3 weeks out, all coming together. I look forward to it every year. Two of the most inspiring days every year, and you can the energy starts to show up. You start to see the hashtag on Twitter, like how many events do you know? That a month before the event, you can start to see the conversation of people from around the world that are coming to this thing. So we get excited about it.
Let's talk a little bit about it. Tell us about somebody who is a well-known superstar. Give me a
Well,
little-
on the same topic of putting youth
Yeah.
on the stage, we just nailed down the arrangements. A 16-year-old high school student, Royce Mann, is a student activist. He's had several of his spoken word poems go viral online, and I've met him. He's incredible. You would not believe that this kid is 16 years old and speaking to power and speaking to adults in ways that you just have to pay attention to. He's amazing, and we just nailed down his mom's going to come with him here to Providence.
Where are they coming in from?
They're in Colorado. And they're going to come for the event and mark this down. Royce Mann, even if you can't be in the theater with us, we're going to live stream it. You want to, when we release the schedule of what time different storytellers are going to share their stories, that's when you're going to want to watch.
Yeah, great. And any surprises from the usual formula? Will there be anything different? Will it still be hot dogs at lunch on that first day?
I try to stay out of the details of what we're going to have for lunch and focus on the conditions for what we call random collisions of unusual suspects. So I don't know what we're having for lunch. I think it'll be good. It is every year. There's so much conversation going on over lunch. It's always lunch is always amazing. I mean, I never take the time to actually eat it anyway. Yeah, it's going to be a special thing. We fill up Trinity Rep. Hopefully the weather will be nice for us, but we tent that
Right.
space just outside of there. And over the course of the 2 days, the chemistry level amongst the folks from Rhode Island and from around the country, even from the world. Somebody signed up the other day from New Zealand. And I'm looking at it like, how does that even happen?
Yeah,
like,
right.
that somebody finds this event here in Providence from New
Well, it's
Zealand.
gotten a fair amount of press in the past couple of
and
years.
makes the trip. Yeah, I mean, we do our best to put the word out there.
Well, we got Forbes loves this
Yeah,
year as one of the top meetings in
that
the
helps.
country. And the year before, I think Inc. magazine named it one of the
That's
top business innovation meetings. from your trip, and just tie it back together before we end.
Yep.
You know, what was it about Ireland? You know, Ireland right now, from my experience, is this collision of two different worlds going on. This almost ancient land of agriculture and
Yep.
and you know, meadows and tiny country roads, and then you go into a Dublin or a Limerick, and there's literally cranes absolutely almost working every square inch of the city, building some new financial service headquarters, you know, tied to Brexit, but also technology, Facebook, Google, Cisco, they're all there with major presence. What could we learn here from Ireland and what's going on
Well,
there?
I think the importance of community really came across to me. We traveled, we're there 4 days. We traveled, not the whole country, but we got a sense of it. Every single town we went to was sweeter than the one before.
Yeah, right.
Every single one. I mean, the homes were well kept, right? Not huge,
No.
but beautiful and well kept. And the center of town was postcard pretty and
Yeah.
beautiful. And a lot of these towns aren't tourist attractions. They just take great pride in their community, and you can tell that they do. Now, they've had the benefit, when you have a national unemployment rate of 1.6, anybody who wants to find work, can find work, right? And so that helps. But still, I think the great care that is taken there in those local towns and communities, and great pride that people have for that. And everywhere we went, people were friendly. I just learned, so much about the history of the place, which is interesting in its own right. But modern day Ireland is something to see, and the beauty is breathtaking.
It's absolutely
as you
beautiful.
travel around.
One other interesting thing there versus here, in rural areas here, we're getting this big pushback on renewable energy
Yep.
opportunities in their communities, solar and
Yep.
wind. You go out in Ireland, there's wind.
I
There's
saw
wind
wind
turbines
everywhere.
absolutely everywhere.
And they fit beautifully
And
into the
they-
landscape.
absolutely.
And you didn't look at that and say, oh, look, they've industrialized the place.
No.
They have wind turbines. They were beautiful,
Right.
And you want to say, why did it take us so long? Why is it taking us so long to move more quickly to these alternative forms of sustainable energy? Europe has been way ahead of us. And so a lot of the technology, right, a lot of the technology to drive those things comes from Northern Europe.
Absolutely.
Right? Certainly on the offshore side, comes from Northern Europe and gets brought here, and we're using it here off the coast here.
It's interesting, as you know, they've had a big drought over there
Yep.
this summer, and because of the weather pattern, wind energy has not performed as it usually is estimated to, but the solar has outperformed
really?
what it's estimated to do, and more than offset what the implications of the decreased wind production. So an interesting balancing of the two different renewable mixes over there and the implications of it. Gary talked a little bit about the lack of firm, forward-thinking leadership articulating vision in Rhode Island, and not just saying that it's the responsibility only of the governor or putting on anyone, the lack of business community, nonprofit community, etc. And I think that's where there is a little suffering right now, that no one's coming forward. I think people know it, but they don't want to get the backlash of NIMBYism, so they sort of whisper renewables are a good idea rather than pushing
this
forward.
This is the Rhode Island way, isn't it?
Right.
Like, instead of having the real conversation, looking at the trade-offs of some of these policies, actually coming up with a policy, that works for the whole state. The whole thing's 1,000 square miles, for heaven's
Right.
sakes. Instead of 38 cities in town. Policy. 39 cities and towns. Coming up, organically. Right. We don't take advantage of our small size with clear policies, and energy is one of those areas. I think we've made some progress. Goes back several administrations.
Absolutely.
I think we've been on it. I'm always proud when I see the offshore wind. I think the costs will start to come down, and it'll become
seeing it
more
already come down.
economical. I hope we get more of the back end, jobs that come from that.
Yeah.
As these things start to take off up and down the shore, but also on land where it makes sense.
I believe it's a Forbes piece last week, more jobs now in renewable than on fossil fuel
Oh, I believe it.
here in America.
Oh, I believe it.
With that, Mr. Innovation, thanks so much. We're gearing up. The countdown to Biff is on. It'll be September 13th
13th
and 14th at Trinity. If you have not bought tickets yet, you've got very limited few days to do so, and you cannot buy them via Amazon Prime. You cannot buy them there. You've got to go to the Business Innovation Factory website, and they'll deliver them even faster than Amazon Prime. Thank you as always. Thank everybody for tuning in. Tomorrow, back-to-back, Rachel Nunes, Kate Nagel, 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock. Lots of lifestyle, lots of government and politics. Thank everybody at Deepwater, and thank you for tuning in to the Navigant.